Fox News Alert, brand new video showing two Israeli hostages who were released by Hamas receiving medical attention in Egypt. That comes as the Biden administration reportedly pressures Israel to delay its ground invasion into Gaza. Let's get to Mike Tobin right away. He's standing by with the very latest in southern Israel as this broke just before we came to air. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Dana. The Red Cross confirmed it, and now we have some visual confirmation with video being released by the Al-Qahra news agency showing these two Israeli hostages being loaded into ambulances on the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing. It should be noted that Israel won't confirm their release until they are back in Israeli hands. But Nurit, Lifshitz, and Yokheved, Yitzhak are out of the Gaza Strip, out of Hamas captivity. Hamas said they were released on humanitarian grounds. There is reporting or information anyway to the effect that they are in bad health. There was reports throughout the day suggesting there were deals cooking that would involve the release of 50 of the hostages held in the Gaza Strip. Sources talking with our Aisha Hasni said it's more like 70 to 90 foreign nationals with the prospect of being released through negotiations. Israel said that they're not concerned about what passport someone holds. They're interested in seeing the release of all 222 of the prisoners. Also, information released or that was leaked from the negotiations suggested that a ceasefire was part of the discussion, but Israel is not interested in a ceasefire. Dana?
Mike, thank you so much. Well, the release of two more hostages comes as the Biden administration faces new questions over reports that it put into the media that it has been privately urging Israel to delay the ground invasion into Gaza. The administration trying to buy more time for the hostage negotiations, but publicly, the White House says that it is not their business to tell Israel what to do.
We're not dictating military terms to the Israeli Defense Forces. They have a right and a responsibility to go after these terrorists, and they certainly are going to do it in a way that they choose to, that they believe is appropriate to the threat. But we're not dictating terms to them. We agree that the top priority has got to be going after Hamas. There's no daylight here. We also think it's important for humanitarian assistance to flow and for our hostages to get home with their families, and we're working all three of those things.
And President Biden getting asked about a potential ceasefire, and it seems like he messed up his words a bit.
Should Israel is the U.S. supporting the hostages for a ceasefire deal?
Why did you? We should have a ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire. We should have those hostages released, and then we can talk.
Has there been any progress on that, Mr. President?
That's just, can I just point of personal privilege for just a second? The Commander-in-Chief of the United States, if you are going to answer that question, do it at the microphone so that the world can hear you. That's important. Not when you're walking away, not when you're trying not to take questions. That's an important question, and it's an important answer. Okay, point of personal privilege done. Greg,
yes.
May I turn to you, please?
Well, I have to say it's nice to see that elderly woman smiling and that she's alive. And I think, I suspect, like a lot of people, Hamas is using hostage negotiations as a way to put off their own deaths. But what do I know? I'm a magazine editor. So I think that these questions like whether America is reportedly trying to delay ground invasions, I don't know. And the moment-by-moment coverage puts us in this constant speculation mode about stuff that we know zilch about. So I don't know anything about ground forces or strategies or tunnels. Every opinion that I seem to hear is not anybody's own. There are armchair analysts coming up with stuff. I still think that we should step back. It's like we're watching water boil right now. Israel has decided its course, and that course will come. And what will happen now and what will happen later is for reasons that none of us will probably know until it happens. I mean, you could argue that this whole thing, the delay, is actually a clever front story, that maybe there are some things going on that we don't know about. I get tons of emails from viewers, and they think they've struck on some kind of original solution, flood the tunnels, gas the tunnels. We're all getting these emails as if these ideas didn't occur already from the IDF. The bottom line is you should be skeptical of what you hear, because it's what you don't hear that matters. So obsessing over ground invasions is going to keep us busy, but the players involved have already moved on and are doing something else, and they might be using the confusion and the, quote, waiting, as something involving creating the best environment for the most innovative response, something we aren't aware of. And again, I mean, for people like us who are not there, you know, we should be thinking past this. What comes after? I keep mentioning a coalition of Arab countries with the help of Israel to fix this thing after, because you can't go back. What's done is done. Obsessing over the past is a loser's game. October 7th is the start of this story, and Israel is prepared to finish it.
And, Judge, it's interesting because when you look at something like the New York Times, and with a headline like that, with the sourcing that it's had, it's just like that phrase that if you see a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there on its own. Somebody put it there. Yeah. And so they have, you know, it wired so that they can tell the media what they want to say from the administration, but then publicly they say that they're strong.
Right. You know, what's interesting about this is the fact that if this country, and it appears it is telling Israel to slow down, telling him we've got to get aid to the hostages, aid to the Palestinians, release the hostages. Think about it. We had 2 hostages released last week, 2 hostages released today. There are 220 hostages. If we get 2 a week, we're in this for 110 weeks. Okay? Talk about a slowdown. Talk about a delay. Look, Israel wants these hostages as much, if not more, than everyone else. It's their neighborhood. They know what to do. They know what it's like. And, Dana, this is now a regional war. This is not just Hamas and Israel. This is Hezbollah, where Israel is evacuating people from the north on the border of Lebanon. There are daily fights in the West Bank. Americans have been shot at in Syria and Iraq. 9 soldiers injured, 1 contractor who died of a heart attack, apparently. And Kirby has indicated that those attacks are by an Iranian-backed militia. We've got the U.S. intercepting long-range missiles from Yemen, and we've also got China moving warships to the Middle East. So now this is more than a regional war, and, you know, and no one knows better than Israel how to handle it, what they're up against. But I spoke to someone in the IDF today, and this is what he said to me. He said the White House military advisors are consulting, and they're over in Israel now. He said, we need ammo. We need those interceptors for the drone. He said, and in 9 months, we're going to have a problem, and we need America. So America can say we've got hands off, but they know that in terms of what Israel needs, they're going to have to listen. And my final point is this. You know, humanitarian efforts cannot delay a justified response on the part of Israel. 350 to 500,000 Germans were killed by the Allied forces in World War II. Nobody said, hey, we got to stop. We can't kill any Germans. They said, we've got to stop Hitler. And that's how it worked. And so right now, people are suffering at the hands of Hamas. This is getting bigger and bigger. It's time for Israel to say, our war, we didn't wake up on October 7th and decide we were going to attack Hamas. They started this. We need to finish it.
Jessica, what are your thoughts today?
My thoughts are that I agree with what Greg was saying, and we were talking about this on Friday as well, that there are people who are much better informed than us that are pulling the strings here, and hopefully it is not 110 weeks and that we go maybe two a day would be nice, and maybe there's going to be a flood of them.
Everybody tomorrow.
I would love
There's a 5-month-old baby in there.
It is excruciating, the details of that, of what has happened and what I'm sure continues to go on. And that was a major theme I noticed of the weekend's coverage. If you saw, the spokesperson for the Israeli government held a briefing for journalists who doubt their stories and showed them all of the profane footage. I mean, I was particularly struck. Trey Yingst was interviewing a rescue worker who said that Hamas gouged a man's eyes out, cut off his wife's breasts, chopped their daughter's leg off. Nothing is going to stop Israel from hunting down these sadistic savages who did this. So they know what they're doing, but we are also helping more than whatever that kind of bumbling response from Biden. Axios just reported a story an hour ago saying that we have an American 3-star general on the ground. We have military officers there that are training IDF soldiers in how we would approach this. There is a ground invasion being prepared, and the beginnings of it already started, and some of the most complex hostage negotiations that we've seen. And Bibi is really suffering over there. I mean, the polling out of Israel is astounding. So 80% of Israelis want Bibi to take public responsibility for this. And he already has people high up in his government that have come out and publicly apologized
he has not.
for missing. No, he's run away. He doesn't meet with the families. He wears his little vest around and doesn't go where he's supposed to go. And I understand he's embarrassed about what he did with the judiciary and that IDF soldiers had to be on the other side of the country because of the mess that he caused. But these people are dead now, and they need your support, and they need you to take public responsibility for what has happened and try to mend this, especially if you want some sort of political future.
Now you agree with Trump.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh,
Jessica.
Bibi's a big loser. I'm like, yeah.
Prime time.
Well, I don't know anything about Israeli politics, but I do know Joe Biden's not cut out to be commander-in-chief. You have to be precise when you speak about war. Yep. And the man does not have it, Jessica. In the last 72 hours, he said, oh, let's do a ceasefire. Let's not do a ceasefire. Let's negotiate for hostages. I don't know what the policy is. Do you know what I have no idea. No, you don't, because he doesn't. Because the policy changes every single day, Jessica. There's a lot of pressure on him right now, but there's a lot of pressure throughout the region, and we're advertising we're under pressure. I see leaks every day in Axios saying the administration is panicked over World War III. Now, why are we even talking to reporters about how panicked we are about World War III? We're admitting we're running low on weapons. We're admitting we have no idea how many hostages there are. I mean, this is what you say. You say the United States will do everything we possibly can to defend our allies and our interests in the region. That's it. And you say if anybody messes with us, they'll face the full force of the U.S. military. And you say nothing else. And it's like everybody's just kind of like just speaking about how they're feeling all of the time to the media. My God, it's embarrassing. Now, it looks like what happened here was that Biden was caught out of posture in the Mideast. When he was elected, he pulled these defense batteries, the anti-missile defense systems, the Patriots, out. And now he has to rush them back in. And they're not there yet. So he's telling Bibi to slow down and don't go ground because we're not ready for this to escalate. Because if this escalates with the Iranians and Hezbollah before we have our defense in there, then we're going to get caught and we're going to get hurt. So that's the delay. The longer this delay goes on, the better it is for Hamas. Yep. And the better it is for Hezbollah and the better it is for the Iranians. Not only are they winning the so-called PR war with these hostage releases, you should see how these releases are being covered in Al Jazeera. Yeah. I mean, they're making it like these people are the diplomats. These people are the humanitarians. And if we would just do a ceasefire, we could settle this thing all together like that. Also, if you're bombarding northern Hamas with artillery and you're not going in on the ground, you're just having Palestinians and Hamas people with little video cameras and their phones film it, make it look like it's indiscriminate, and then blast it out to the entire world. And the squad is saying it's indiscriminate. You have U.S. members of Congress saying this is indiscriminate bombing. These are war crimes. Meanwhile, they're surgical strikes targeting strongholds. But they're losing face in the region. They're also letting the Iranians arm up Hezbollah. How many shipments are going across the desert right now that we can't even track? They need to go in. And I am not a military expert, Greg.
You sound like
one. But the longer this goes on, the worse it is for Israel.
No question.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.